I'm Patrick Gavin, Politico. It is now time to turn the table with CBS News' John Dickerson. John, some interesting news out of Washington yesterday with the announcement of some new filibuster rules in the Senate. You wrote a really interesting piece on Slate.com talking about why filibuster reform is the old Senate's official death. Talk a little bit about what you're trying to say there.
Well, one of the arguments against this move by the Democrats was that they were breaking the traditions of the Senate, that they were really crossing not only a rule, but just sort of bruising the institution. When Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader, left the Senate floor, he said it's a sad day for the Senate. My argument was basically the old style of the Senate, where the institution was created to foster bipartisanship, where there were these sort of gentlemen's and gentle ladies agreements, that has actually been changing for quite some time. Earlier in the year, we saw a situation in which freshman senators could essentially take control of the body, this now on the Republican side, where Ted Cruz and Mike Lee were able to push their view about defunding Obamacare and making that contingent upon continuing the funding of the government. They basically took control of the Senate. That never would have happened in the old days. And so in an institution that's changing like that, where polarization is much more the norm, where the parties are totally split off, the old-fashioned filibuster rule was a bit of a relic. And so this is kind of the Senate catching up with itself. Of course, the Republicans don't exactly see it that way, but that was my take.
Obviously the president liked what he saw. Are we going to see this result in a more efficient Washington, a better Washington, or is this simply just more partisan politics?
Well, it'll be more efficient. Well, actually, there could be a moment of inefficiency here as Republicans decide whether or not they want to gum up the works. There are still some things they could do on appointments to just kind of raise procedural motions and slow things down. But ultimately, yes, there will be greater efficiency, and that will benefit the president and the Democrats for the moment. And then in a few years, it will put the Republicans in strong shape if they retake the Senate. And it obviously makes taking back the Senate, which was a possibility, it makes that something Republicans are going to work even harder for, so that they can block the president, but then also so that if they get a Republican president, they can make all kinds of appointments that will be relatively quickly adopted.
Switching over to Obamacare, the president is continuing to try to improve things and also defend the crux of the Affordable Care Act, and yet there all seem to be these constant drips of embarrassing moments, be it Kathleen Sebelius being right in front of a computer where the website was not loading, or actually just some reporting that we're finding out about who knew what when. And it turns out a lot of people did have concerns before the launch of this. Where do things stand in terms of the Obama administration's messaging or politics or salesmanship in trying to reassure Americans that, in fact, this is a website worth going to, this is a program worth getting involved in?
Well, as you mentioned, the bad stories keep continuing, and there are the bad stories that are related to the abysmal rollout of the website, but then there are the bad stories or complicated stories that are a result of the fact that this was a law intended to disrupt the insurance market in which there would be winners and losers, and some of those policy outcomes, when they are seen in the bright light of day, can seem complex and are certainly unfortunate if you're on the losing end of that. Because the website isn't working, there aren't enough good stories about people who are winning in the new environment to kind of swamp the bad stories. So those are the two different kinds of problems that continue. And all that's going to fix that is if the president can show that the website is working and that people are getting signed up. It's not enough to have people be able to go through a multi-day process of getting on the phone and meeting with navigators and some complicated thing. This needs to be what was originally promised, which was a relatively simple website that can get lots of people signed up. The good news for the president, to the extent that there is any, is that in some of these state exchanges, the signups have been quite good, which suggests that the product itself, at the heart of this, doesn't have flaws. And that if he can just get the sort of gateway to getting to people to that product, that he might be able to come to a day when lots of people are signing up and receiving what was promised. But so the real marks are the end of November to see whether the website is working as was promised. But then after that, it's going to take a few months to see whether people are signing up in sufficient numbers to make this an actually viable piece of policy.
All right, John, tell us about what we can expect to see on Face the Nation this Sunday.
Well, we're going to have Steny Hoyer, the number 2 on the Democratic side in the House, and then Kevin McCarthy, the number 3 on the Republican side. We'll talk about health care, immigration, the budget, all those kinds of things. Then we'll talk to Clint Hill, who was in John Kennedy's Secret Service detail that horrible day in Dallas. Then on the panel, we'll have Kim Strassel, David Sanger, David Rode, and then I'll be bringing up the rear.
All right, John Dickerson with CBS News. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks, Patrick.